So this one confused me a little bit. Lego vows to remove gender bias from its toys. They're building blocks. They're fucking Legos. What what gender biases are there? Maybe you want to make more Lego women, Lego girls. I'm. That's about it. And maybe make sets that appeal more to girls, make a make a My Little Pony set and collab with Barbie. Like I feel like girls are either gonna be in the Legos or they're not. I feel like there's not much you can do to fix that. The byline says we still experience age-old stereotypes that label activities as only being suitable for one specific gender, the company said. If you want to take for boys or for girls off your packaging, fine. I don't give a fuck about that. Do that all you want. Just, I mean, if they're not interested in them, they're not interested in them. Got Harry Potter sets, girls like Harry Potter. You've got Star Wars sets that Disney's been trying to gear Star Wars towards girls for a while since they got it, basically. So, I mean, there's not a lot that you can really do. But let's get into this article. This is from NBC News by Yelia Talmazan. They say, Danish toy-making giant Lego on Monday pledged to remove gender bias from its toys after research found girls were being held back by gender stereotypes. The company, whose colorful building blocks and figurines sell in more than 130 countries, said it wants to make its products more inclusive so that children's ambitions are not limited by gender. Again, how's Lego limiting by gender here? They're Legos. Like I said before, you can add more Lego girls if you want. You can make sets that appeal more to girls, like girls' properties like My Little Pony, Barbie, whatever. But there's not a lot you can do. The company will ensure any child, regardless of gender identity, feels that they can build anything they like, Lego said in a statement. They can. You just get set building blocks, build whatever you want. What's going on? Lego vowed to make its products free of gender bias and harmful stereotypes, saying there's a need for wider society to rebuild perceptions. What are you going to do, though? There's no gender bias in Legos. Lego did not elaborate what exactly it would modify about its products to bring about these changes. So, there it is. They probably don't know. However, in an emailed statement to NBC News, the company said it has transitioned its products and marketing department from gender-focused product groups to groups focusing on passions and interests. So at certain properties, like Star Wars and Harry Potter, is that what they're talking about? I feel like you're just going to be doing the same things in that case. The company also said it has recently published a diversity and inclusivity playbook for its product design and marketing teams, whatever that means. The benefits of creative play, such as building confidence, creativity, and communication skills, are felt by all children, yet we still experience age-old stereotypes that label activities as only being suitable for one specific gender, Julia Golden, Chief Product and Marketing Officer, said in a company statement. They're labeled like that because often the gender that it's labeled for, they'll gravitate toward that thing more than the other. So you can take it off, you can take the label off, but it's not going to change much of anything demographic-wise for these toys or products, whatever. It's labeled like that because that gender gravitates toward that thing. Lego's promise came as the company released new research showing that girls were more open to engage in different types of play than boys. But I would believe that, actually. Because growing up as a boy, like, oh, that's for girls. And I do notice that girls are more open to stuff that would normally be for boys. So, I do understand that. But societal norms about play, including attitudes of their parents, limited their potential. The research involved nearly 7,000 parents and children in 7 countries, Lego said. That's where we're going to stop here, because I don't know if This must be more recent, but they've already done this study before. This is an article from, oh, is it not labeled the year? Oh, it is. May 25th, 2016. This is from 5 years ago, over 5 years ago, like 5.5 almost. So, this was research, and talks about research done like 2008, I think. Yeah. Right here, we're gonna skip this stuff. And it says years before Charlotte sent her letter, and this is talking about a girl that wrote a letter saying she doesn't like how there's more Lego boys than Lego girls. That's what they're talking about there. This is from The Atlantic, by the way. Lego was already keenly focused on how girls perceive the brand. It was 2008 when the toy maker decided to gather global data about who buys Legos. What they found was startling. In the United States, roughly 90% of Lego sets being sold were intended for boys. In other words, there was a huge untapped market of girls who weren't building with Legos. Probably because they noticed that girls weren't buying Legos, weren't playing with Legos as much as boys, so they geared it toward boys more so. But again, with Legos, if you don't really gear it toward a specific gender that much, the play sets, I guess, you might have a property that is geared toward boys that you make a set for. You might be doing that more so than girls' properties, or just ones that both are interested in, maybe. So if you want to do that. Make more sets for girls' properties, I guess. Just don't alienate boys as well. But nowadays, these sets that would have been geared towards boys before, those companies are now gearing those properties toward girls more and kind of alienating boys. So you're not really changing much if you're just doing that now. I don't see what they can really do here to change their demographic. In other words, there was a huge untapped market of girls who weren't building with Legos. Seeing that the play pattern was really skewing so heavily towards boys, we wanted to understand why, McNally said. We embarked on 4 years of global research with 4,500 girls and their moms. The other one said 7,000, so it must be a different study. Some of the things we heard were really surprising and challenging in ways that we weren't really comfortable for us as a brand. Namely, Lego found that girls and boys played with Legos differently within one another. They consistently had distinct ideas about how to interact with the same toys they encountered, expectations that seemed to be drawn along gender lines, in focus group after focus group. Lego had stumbled into a dynamic that's as familiar as it is controversial. The idea that boys and girls from a very young age construct starkly divergent worlds for play. There's academic research to back up the notion that girls and boys gravitate toward different toys, and babies as young as 18 months old show gender-related behaviors when playing with certain toys. Because their brains are built differently, the chemicals in their bodies, they're these like testosterone and hormones, estrogen, whatever, those make your brain work differently. Boys be more interested in construction because they want to feel macho. They want to do the dirty work more so. Girls don't want to be involved with that stuff, really. That's why there's such a big gap there. Further research shows that perceived gender of a toy itself can have significant impact on toy preferences and exploration, wrote the authors of a 2003 paper published in the Journal of Educational Psychology about how children play with toys. Kids routinely favor the toy that they believe is meant for them based on their gender. But the decision matrix that ultimately influences widespread views on which toys are for which children includes inputs from parents, kids, and toy makers, adding up to a system that produces something of a feedback loop. And those people decide that based on what boys and girls are gravitating toward. It's not just that they're coming up with different labels. Okay, this thing is going to be for girls. This thing's going to be for boys. I'm just going to split them up. No, it's because girls are gravitating towards one thing and boys gravitating towards another. And that's why they're being labeled as such. If you want to take those labels off, fine. It's perfectly fine. But you can't just say girls are playing with this and boys are playing with this just because they're labeled boy and girl. It's just nonsense. Researchers have found that toys judged to be most appropriate for girls tend to be seen as attractive, creative, nurturing, and manipulable, whatever that means. I think maybe kind of customizable, and you can kind of make it like a Barbie doll. Maybe you can change the clothes, you can make it act a certain way. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Whereas toys that are seen as being appropriate for boys are viewed as more competitive, aggressive, and constructive. And that goes to my point, where it's the testosterone and the hormones and estrogen that split them up. Designed to encourage sociability and to reflect reality. Boys are more likely to be given vehicles, balls, and toy guns, while girls are more likely to get domestically oriented toys like baby dolls and tiny vacuum cleaners. Never thought about anybody playing with a tiny vacuum cleaner, toy vacuum cleaner before. In another study published in 1986, researchers found dozens of children aged 4 to 9 interacted more with the toys that had labels corresponding to their own genders and remembered more details about those toys 1 week later. There's a couple paragraphs here that we're going to skip, but in other words, differences in how kids play have real-world consequences for children as they grow up. But what exactly are those differences, and where do they come from? Though these two questions are interconnected, the first one is much easier to answer than the second. See how boys and girls play, you just have to watch them do their thing. What LEGO did over the course of its research in the past decade. For one project, LEGO gathered a group of boys and asked them to build a LEGO castle together. Separately, they gave the same task to a group of girls. Both groups worked together to build a castle, but once it was assembled, there were stark differences how the groups proceeded. The boys immediately grabbed the figures and the horses and the catapults, and they started having a battle, McAnally said. The facilitator said, "What about the castle?" And they said, "Well, it's just a backdrop for the battle." The girls, on the other hand, were more focused on the structure and not too impressed with what they found. They all looked around inside the castle and they said, "Well, there's nothing inside," McNally said. That's this idea of interior versus exterior on the orientation, how they would then play with what they built, was really interesting. Think about most of the LEGO models that people consider to be meant for boys. There's not a whole lot going on in there. But the girls had this idea of there's nothing inside to do. I think this goes to the idea of manipulable, that the word they used earlier. I think that might shed some light on what they meant with that. But moving on. Both girls and boys were saying they liked building, but there were nuances in what they were looking for, he added. We heard girls overwhelming saying that they would much rather build environments with single structures. Really just looking for a lot more detail than we were offering. So LEGO decided to offer something new. In 2012, the toy maker launched LEGO Friends, stylized boxes with a heart dotting the eye and a butterfly hovering nearby, a new line designed for girls. The Friends line includes a pop star's house, limousine, TV studio, recording studio, dressing room, and tour bus. A cupcake cafe, a giant treehouse, a supermarket, and a hair salon. Among other construction sets, a science lab that was part of the Friends line, which included a pet robot and tiny microscope, is now listed on the LEGO site as retired. From the beginning, LEGO Friends sparked a vocal debate. NPR asked, "Why do girls need special Legos?" A writer from the New York Times lamented LEGO's designs, which she said looked far more Polly Pocket than LEGO Hermione Granger. There were a lot of people at the beginning who said they've dumbed it down. It's not nearly as complicated as the original Legos. It's special for girls because they don't think that girls can build. McNally told me the reality is it's just about piece for piece. There are just as many pieces required to put something together among Friends sets. So then they geared something towards girls, and then, why does it have to be different? Why does it have to be easier? If they do this now, it's probably gonna produce the same reaction. And it's just because girls don't like the same thing boys do. That's it. You don't need girls in everything. Girls like certain things, boys like certain things. That's it. boys are more capable of doing certain things, girls more capable of doing certain things. There's not much else to it for most things. If you want to take the labels off the box for boys and girls, fine. But I think this does relate to Hollywood a little bit. Because, like we talked about with the castle thing, I think this relates to Hollywood a little bit. Like, when boys are making things with existing properties or, like, historical aspects, whatever. Like with the castle, medieval times. They like to separate the characters from themselves, whereas girls will take a Barbie and insert themselves into it. Try to make it act like them. And I feel like that kind of relates to Hollywood a little bit with what they're doing right now. It's mostly women taking these existing properties and adding real world to it. Real world politics and kind of doing self-inserts sometimes. And there is some guys, like some male feminists and these woke guys doing this as well, but it's mostly women now. I feel like that kind of relates to what we're talking about here with the Legos. Just girls and boys act differently, think differently. Men made those characters, like Batman, and Superman, and Iron Man, Spider-Man. They made them their own thing. And now there's mostly women taking over these properties and inserting real world politics and real world stuff and doing some self-inserts and just screwing it up. Like in Loki, the TV series, the showrunner's goal, she said her goal with the series was to make Loki bisexual because she was bisexual. So, it's an example there. She's inserting part of herself into that character, inserting kind of real world stuff into that character, whereas the man, I assume, that created Loki didn't really care about that and made him his own person. So it just shows how they think. So that's all that's happening here with Legos. And this channel's more about Hollywood and the entertainment industry. This video is kind of different. I wanted to kind of relate this to that, but I also really wanted to talk about this because I think it's just dumb. You're not going to change much of anything by making these changes. You might get some more sales from girls for making stuff geared towards girls, but not gender neutral stuff, like they're saying here. Want to take away gender bias, you're not going to change much of anything. The only way you'd change demographics, maybe somewhat, not a lot even, is if you geared Lego sets towards girls. Like, did a collaboration with Barbie or My Little Pony or whatever. It's the only way you're going to change it. But let me know what you think about this situation with Lego, and how do you think I'm right with how it relates to Hollywood in a way? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you like to subscribe if you want to see more, comment, share. I have another channel called Thoughtful Outlaw Sports where I talk about basketball, baseball, football, and anything else sports related I'm interested in. So check that out, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.